Hey, what's up? And welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions from across the internet. So make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms and check it out. First question is going to be from Logan, who says, do you think the Raiders would take on Watson's contract for a first and Newsome? They have the cap to take it on. It would give them 2 total top 10 picks and a needed corner, frees the Browns cap space to make a splash in free agency, similar to when the Browns took on Osweiler's contract for a second-round pick. Yeah, so I get the concept here. I just don't think this is a good move for the Browns, if I'm being honest with you, right? Now, when I say that, it's going to get a reaction, probably a negative reaction from some people, because like you just want to move on from Watson as quick as possible and you just want to be done with it, right? And as long as he's still hovering around on the roster, you don't feel done with it. And I understand that perspective. I get that perspective. But my thing with that move is, who are you going to get with that cap space that's going to be a better value than hitting on a top 10 pick? Like, the cap space is not worth the draft pick. You can maneuver around the cap space if you wanted to. And let's be real about it. The Browns are not at the point to where you want to make a ton of big splashes in free agency, unless you're convinced that Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback, which I am not. But unless you're convinced that Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback and you must go get Sam Darnold, then I can't justify doing that, because there's nobody in free agency that's going to be a better value than like Abdul Carter or Mason Graham or one of these like top 5 prospects falling to you in the top 10. So I don't think it makes sense for the Browns. Would the Raiders do it? Yeah. Also, you got to keep in mind, if the Browns trade Deshaun Watson, this is an important part to it. If the Browns trade Deshaun Watson, that money just doesn't magically go away and automatically gets absorbed by the Raiders. $80 million of that money will still be accelerated to this year's cap. So you wouldn't even be freeing up cap space for this year. You would be freeing up cap space for next year. You would still have to eat about $80 million for Deshaun for this year to make that trade, because that accelerates that number. It's less expensive, most certainly, than cutting him, because if you cut him this offseason, it accelerates $140 million to the cap. So they're definitely not going to cut him. But trading him, you still eat about 80. So it doesn't even free up money for free agency. It does not make sense for the Browns to include a first-round pick to trade Deshaun Watson to free the contract, because the contract is not as big as an albatross to their ability to do things as people think that it is. And it's a contract that, you know, since they only have one bad contract on the books, they can kick that can down the road, pay less over it over time, and be fine. So I don't think the need is there to make a move like this for the Cleveland Browns. And you're going to hear all kind of crazy stuff. I already saw somebody float that the Browns should trade Myles Garrett to free up caps. None of that would actually help the Browns cap situation. Like, all of these half-baked Browns cap solutions are garbage, right? The Browns aren't in an amazing spot with their salary cap, but they're fine. They don't have to do any of these moves to kind of free up space in a panic. Rarely does an NFL team have to make moves like that to free up space in a panic. And usually when they do have to make moves like that, it's less about the cap and more about the fact that the owner's bankrupt or something like that. So no, they're not in a situation. Like, the only time this has happened is with the Raiders and Mark Davis. And I think that's because Mark Davis was like cash poor at the time, because he couldn't afford to pay out the John Gruden contract or something like that. Tez says, does another year of Ken Dorsey, help the offense with familiarity of the scheme? There will also be a lot of changes, but I think the passing game will involve most of the same players. So hoping we can get some more looks. Love from the UK. Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? Because on one hand, you can say Ken Dorsey was brought here for a specific reason. That reason doesn't exist anymore with Deshaun Watson. But also, you got to evaluate what Ken Dorsey's been able to do while he's here. And he hasn't been bad. So maybe there's something to it. You know, I have my issues at times with some of his play calling, but it's not been like terrible. I don't think that's the Browns' worst problem on offense. And honestly, I like the fact that the Browns are able to move the ball downfield a little bit more frequently than they did with Kevin. I think that Ken's added some nice stuff to this offense. So it'd be interesting to see if they stick with him. And even if they don't stick with him, if they stick with some of the stuff that he brought, that's why I think if he leaves, it's likely that like Tommy Rees takes over as offensive coordinator, is somebody who can maintain some of the stuff that Dorsey brought in, but also, you know, not be a big enough name to where you have that kind of friction on when it comes to calling plays that it seemed like that was there at the beginning of the season. Cyber Oprah says, how much does Darnold get signed for next year, and why is it the Browns that are going to pay for it? I don't know if the Browns are going to pay for it, but Darnold's going to be, like, they're saying he's going to be $45 million. I can't believe that. I've heard 35, like as an estimate for him as well. To me, my number is 18 with Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold is more expensive than $18 million a year, I'm good. I get that 35 is technically not that much for a quarterback. It's under the market. Quarterbacks are getting paid $60 million. But I think in my heart of hearts, Sam Darnold is worth $10 million as a quarterback. I'm willing to overpay because he's a quarterback. I'll go to 18. But I feel like you start paying him more than that, you start expecting more out of Sam than what he is. And that's just, I don't want to put myself in that situation, man. I don't want to put this team, this fan base in that situation again. Like, you got to be really sure about the next quarterback you pay if you're going to pay that quarterback more than like $30 million to play for the team. You feel me? Like, it's a lot. Sin says, Browns should get Justin Fields. We saw what they could do with the Steelers offense. Imagine what he could do with the Browns improving offense. I think the problem with Justin Fields is that he doesn't see the middle of the field well, and that's a big part of what the Browns want to do. The Spartan says, what are your thoughts in the options that we have with Watson contract, fast track, getting off the books, or take a big cap hit in the next 2 years, kick the can down the road, continue dealing with it longer? So the reason why kicking the can down the road makes sense is because of how the salary cap works. The salary cap goes up with league revenues. League revenues has been increasing, which means the salary cap has been increasing. So the cap's going to go up about 7-8% every year, right? Sometimes it goes up more than that. Sometimes it goes up a little lower than that, but it usually goes up plus 7-8%, which means if you owe somebody $45 million in 2025, that $45 million will be worth 8% less against the cap over average, right? So it makes sense if you owe somebody a ton of money to move that money down the road, because that money will be worth less over time. Think of it as a credit card with reverse interest. Instead of paying more for lending money, you get money off for moving money down the line. So that is why the Browns will move the can down the road. There's no tangible benefit from them deciding to accelerate this cap move unless they felt like I could only situation I could see where the Browns want to accelerate this cap move, this cap hit for Deshaun Watson and cut him. The only real scenario I see is, let's say that DTR had developed into a franchise quarterback, right? Like right before our eyes. Or let's say, and the thing is, I think that's how it's going to go, because the only situation where it would make sense for the Browns to want to get off this money as soon as possible is if they had drafted somebody a year or two ago and that person looked like they were going to be a franchise quarterback. So let's say that the DTR pick, they drafted a franchise quarterback with the DTR pick, right? Obviously didn't happen. Don't think DTR is a franchise quarterback. Let's imagine a world where like Deshaun goes out that first year and DTR is amazing, and then we find out that DTR is a franchise quarterback. Well, then you're going to have to start thinking about giving DTR an extension, right? A pretty sizable extension, which means whatever you owe with Deshaun Watson, you're going to want to accelerate through while DTR is under a rookie contract, so that by the time you get to what DTR's deal expires in like 2026, 2027, or any quarterback that was taken last year, their deal would expire in 2 seasons, right? Which means that you want to get that done after the 3rd season, because you don't want them playing on the end of their deal. So that would mean the Browns would probably like cut Deshaun Watson to accelerate that hit and take that hit while DTR is on his rookie deal to spend that money on DTR once they get out of that hit. That's the only benefit to accelerating the cap. But since the Browns aren't in that situation, the only guy who they could get on a rookie deal that'd be a franchise quarterback would be somebody who's taken from this draft or later. And you're not going to have to worry about a rookie contract extension from a quarterback in this draft class until well after the Watson deal is taken care of, if you continue to spread it out, which means they have no incentive to do this cap hit in one big bulk and cut him really quick. They have all the incentive in the world to do it the opposite way, which is to spread it out. Because again, if they had a franchise quarterback on the roster, they had like lucked out, drafted a guy in the late rounds, then they would be in that situation, but not in that situation. So it doesn't make sense to do it. So they're going to let this thing spread out because that's what makes the most sense for them. Convane says, I know it might be the most logical of picks or more of a luxury, but Genty is on the board when the Browns pick. What are the chances they pull the trigger on him? I don't think it's zero, right? I don't think it's zero. He's a really good player. They need a running back. It depends on how much pressure is on them to win now. If there's a lot of pressure on them to win now, then yeah, they'll go after Genty because that's going to be like Genty is the best player if you want a player in this draft class who can make you a better team immediately, Genty's the guy that can do that for you because he plays on the offensive side of the ball and he's somebody you can feature your offense around. And he's going to be that good, or at least he projects to be that good. So yeah, if they're like feeling super pressured, they're not going to rush and get a quarterback because I don't think any of these quarterbacks are that this year. But Genty would be the closest thing to giving you that on the offensive side of the ball. Jeffrey says, if we don't get Kirk Cousins, would you be okay with bringing in Cooper Rush as the bridge quarterback? He has 10 touchdowns. I would be fine with giving Cooper Rush an audition. If I'm not signing Cooper Rush to like a $10 million deal over 3 years or something like that. But yeah, giving Cooper Rush an audition, sure. Turn every stone, right? Make sure you leave no stone unturned. Give every option a try, if you're the Cleveland Browns. Because finding a bridge is going to require that you get a little bit creative about how you go about this, man. It's not going to be simple. Isaac says, first, thank you for your videos. You wouldn't understand or believe how much they've been helping me on my journey to sobriety. Oh, shout out to you, bro. It's tough. Appreciate that. Appreciate I could be a part of that. So my question to you is, if you think Dorsey left and they got back to running Kevin's offense, the interior of the offensive line would improve since that's what the line was specifically built for. If so, it isn't an urgent need. How would you feel about drafting Genty first overall, re-signing Jameis at the very least to be a bridge quarterback? I personally think it's a possibility that if the O-line's good and the run game's good, we could do something like the Saints in 2021. Jameis, when he was 5-2 through 14 touchdowns, 3 picks, it seems like Tampa, neither of these areas, along with the defense, was ever good while he was here. So with that, if they just go back to doing what the Browns did before, there are a couple of issues, right? Because I do think Joel has gotten older and he's just not as capable of doing that as he was in 2021. Wyatt Teller's still not as consistent as he was. Ethan Posick should be better if you go back to that system. So it would reduce some of your needs on the offensive line. And if you do get Genty, as I mentioned before, that's the one player in this draft class that will immediately make you better. Now, long term, there's some questions about that, but you will be a better football team with Ashton Genty on your roster. Especially if you focus on running the football a ton, because he will be somebody you can just run your offense through. And since there's no quarterback that you could do that with, I see that as a possibility. Jameis, getting him to that place where he was 5-2 through 14 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, that's going to be tough, right? Maybe that could be something that you bet on, but I wouldn't want to count on it. So if I bring back Jameis, I want to bring back multiple different options I can go to, because you can't count on that, right? That's the thing. Like with Jameis, you just can't count on Jameis. You can take a chance on Jameis. You can give Jameis an opportunity, but counting on him is when you get in trouble. If you do have a strong run game, there is a chance that you could get a better version of Jameis out here, but I would also want to bring in some other options just in case, right? Like if you keep Jameis, you got to have somebody like Jacoby or something like that behind him. Like you can't just run it out here with Jameis again. And I'm going to put this out here. no matter who you bring in free agency, you're going to have to draft somebody pretty much every year until you find a guy. That's just how it's going to have to work. Chamrod says the Angels back in 2021 used all 20 draft picks in selecting pitchers. They had needed pitching for a decade. In this hypothetical realm, the Browns used all 7 picks on quarterbacks. What would your picks be? Meaning all the picks the Browns have for the 2025 draft would be for selecting quarterbacks of all the guys that have declared. So first round would probably be Shedeur Sanders, right? If I took a quarterback in the first round. I don't think Cam Ward's going to be there in the second round, so I'll be more comfortable with Jalen Milroe in the second round. Third round, probably Jackson Dart. I don't know. I got to watch more Jackson Dart. But yeah, let's just say Jackson Dart for now. 4th round, Carson Beck. 5th round, Dylan Gabriel. 6th round, Riley Leonard. 7th round, who is my 7th round guy? Probably Curtis Work. Riley Leonard, Curtis Work, you can flip him, right? You can flip him. But yeah, those two. So that would be my 7 quarterbacks in the 7 rounds, and we will see how that would go. But thank you for the fun exercise there, Chamrod. If the Browns do something like sign Kirk Cousins, this question is from Walea. This question is from Wulahi 7359. If the Browns do something like sign Kirk Cousins in the offseason, do you still see us taking a quarterback in this upcoming draft, like a Jackson Dart, for example? Keep up the great work. Been watching since 2018. Appreciate you. Yeah, that's where I'm at. If you get Kirk Cousins, like I get this comment all the time. Anytime I bring up Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, and somebody says, no, we should just draft somebody. I think you should do both, right? Sign somebody to be your bridge quarterback, draft somebody. As much as like the Falcons got roasted for that philosophy, it's not a bad philosophy. Like taking as many chances at quarterback as you see fit, especially if you like the chances that you're taking, is not a bad strategy. It's worked out before, right? Kirk Cousins is a great example of this because RG3, they took him first overall and they took Kirk Cousins like in the 4th round or something like that. So yeah, if I get Kirk Cousins, I'm definitely drafting somebody to play quarterback as well. Like maybe they don't start year 1, but I'm going to get a flyer, give them the preseason, see if there's something intriguing there. I just saw Josh Palmer make an incredible catch on a 2-point try, watching Thursday Night Football to break up a tie game. So shout out to that. But yeah, if you get Kirk Cousins, you got to draft somebody, right? If you sign Sam Darnold, you should draft somebody, and you should draft somebody the year after. And I'm team draft a quarterback no matter what you feel about the draft class, until you get that quarterback. Because if you like somebody enough, take them, right? Because what's the worst that could happen if you miss on a quarterback, especially like day 2, day 3? It's not really that big of a deal when we're talking about like late 3rd round, 4th round guys. No, I always take the chance. I'm team take the chance here. Small says, you said you plan to doing a ton of prospect evaluations. Will you be taking suggestions for these? Absolutely. I might start doing polls for these, but yeah, absolutely going to be taking suggestions from you guys on that one. Definitely. Chris Gillespie says, how come you never have answered any of my questions? Well, Chris, because I've never seen them in the thing, or maybe they pop up after I already take the question. So if you're wondering how I go about this, so to make sure that you have your best chance to get your question answered, I put this question prompt up. This week was special because it was a holiday, so I did put it up early. But I usually put this question prompt up Thursday, Friday, and I filmed the video that same day. So if you don't get your question in that Thursday, I put the post up, the odds are I'm never going to see it to put it in the video because the video's already done. So I put up the question prompt. I try to give it like a day, and then I film the video later that night. So if you want to make sure that you get your question answered, have your notification on, and then make sure you put your question in there the first day that prompt is posted, because that's when I usually take most of the questions to do Q&A. Now, there's some special times where I don't, but if you just have ever wondered when I'm taking these questions, just look at this. Like, I screenshot that 23 minutes ago. Let me go through the other ones, right? This comment was from 6 hours before I recorded this video, 3 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours. So I take these questions the day of. So the odds are the reason you've never seen your question on here is simply because maybe you're asking them the day after I take and kind of source all the questions. So hope that answered your question. Hope you guys have a great day. Have an even better night.